Good afternoon, everyone. Today we are going to talk about securing Heroku APIs with the MuleSoft Flex Gateway. So let's look at the forward-looking statements first. Customers should make their purchasing decisions with products that we have today. So that's something that we say in every single presentation. So let's go off. First things first, a big thank you for everyone for being here at Dreamforce. We are very excited to have you here, and we have a bunch of demos, exciting demos to show you next. So we'll do that. But let's get started first with introductions. My name is Parvez Mohamed. I am the product manager for the Flex API Gateway, and I've been part of MuleSoft for a couple of years now. Jonathan?
Yes, thanks for your intro, Parvez. My name's John Jenkins, and I work for Heroku. And if there's one thing I would want you to remember about Heroku, it's this. Our design philosophy is it should be as easy as possible for you to take code you've written and run it on cloud infrastructure. This means that the way we build our products, your resourcing allocation should look like the right side of this diagram. In other words, as many people as possible writing code for your apps and services because you can trust that our platform is going to handle infrastructure and DevOps for you. Sounds like a nice philosophy, right? Question, does it actually work? Well, how does a 40% increase in developer productivity sound? 30% reduced DevOps expense? 285% return on investment? We had Forrester do a total economic impact study for us, and they found that, yeah, our design philosophy works. But you know, actually, I'm not a marketer, I'm a nerd, so let's move this on to the tech part. I want to talk to you about building and securing APIs that are accessible from the internet. Why might you need to do that? I mean, there's any number of reasons why your company might need to do this. I'll speak from experience. Here's one example. I used to be a mobile developer. And when you write customer-facing mobile apps, you tend to have APIs for them. And those APIs would have to be accessible from the internet because anybody in the public could be a customer. But you also have to secure them to make sure that only authorized apps can access those APIs. So there's one example. But how would you build that? We can just talk from the standpoint of tools that Heroku offers. You could pick a language. We support several open source languages, and any one of those is going to have some framework that helps you build APIs, and they'll inevitably have plugins to do security and access control, so you could just build the thing and that would work, up to a point. For example, up to the point when some other department in your company decides to build their APIs and they choose a different language, which means different frameworks and different way that the access controls work, and this happens again and again, and Parvez is cringing here because I know that MuleSoft has a phrase for this, don't you?
Yeah, it's called the API sprawl. I'll go through it.
API sprawl. So, scary sounding name, you should see this is going in a bad direction. Let's think about this again. I'm still going to keep this in the bounds of things that Heroku has to help because we have other things that can help. Private spaces. You can create a private space, and when you deploy your apps into that, you get an extra feature. One of the features you get is that you can mark them as internal only to a private space. And if you do that, that means they're not accessible from the internet, they're only accessible to other apps within the private space. So you could deploy your API apps into a private space using that feature. They'd be secure, actually completely inaccessible to the internet. But if you added one more app then, and we'll call it a gateway app, and you didn't mark that as internal only, it would be accessible to the internet, but also because it's in that private space, it would be able to communicate with those API apps. So this would become your only path from the internet to those API apps. This is your opportunity to consolidate that access control code into one place and not scattered across all the API apps. So this is looking like a better pattern, but even so, I look at this and I ask the question, do you really need to build that gateway app? Now, why would I say that? It's because I'm that kind of developer, and what I mean by that is, it's been my experience, two different developer personas I've encountered. There's the one sort, when faced with a problem, they'll go, okay, well I want to build it because then I'll get exactly what I want, and I'll know exactly what the pieces are, and it'll work exactly how I want it to work. And that can be fine, but then you get a different sort of developer looks at the same problem, and their they'll tend towards, well, I wonder if there's something else out here that solves this problem, because if there is, I'd actually rather just use that and focus my attention on something else that's more unique to our business. I'll give you a hint. I tend to be that second kind of developer. So when I look at this, particularly the portion that says Gateway app, and I think about all of the products that Salesforce sells across all their business units, I recognize there actually is a product that already solves this problem. And it turns out that product's Parvez's product. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna let Parvez explain to you what we believe is the optimal thing to use in this circumstance.
Good, thank you, Jonathan. So why universal API management? So as companies scale, as Jonathan mentioned, right, there are many systems that are being built over many decades, sometimes on different architectures, sometimes on different technologies, and you end up with something we call the API sprawl. Now, why is this a bad thing, right? So Gartner says over 50%, 60% of your APIs, they tend to be undiscoverable. So they are all over the place. Sometimes we don't even know where they are and what they do. Now, without enough visibility into all those APIs, what happens is you start off new projects by having to build everything from scratch. Now, as your application network gets more and more complicated, this problem only starts compounding from there, right? So, nothing that we can, stop, but we have to have a process to solve this problem, and that's what we are going to talk about today. Now, MuleSoft is not the only technology in play that helps you solve this problem. APIs are being built with many different technologies, many different technology stacks, many different architectures. So, we have something we call the Mule APIs, and then there is a huge bunch of APIs we recognize as being non-Mule APIs. Now, with our vision for universal API management is to expand the aspect of API management to any API. Doesn't matter if it's built on Mule technologies or if it's built on non-Mule technologies. So with this approach, we are able to build and catalog any API, ensure consistent API quality and security, and then control and secure access to any API. And that's the main part of my talk later in the next few slides. And then most importantly, we'll be able to use these APIs, reuse these APIs by engaging and creating API ecosystems. Now, what we have here is a whole stack of the entire API lifecycle that we provide, and thereby we solve the API sprawl problem. Now, the key aspect of management and securing any API is we provide distributed management with centralized control. And at the heart of this is the AnyPoint API Manager. With the AnyPoint API Manager, you can manage any API, both Mule and non-Mule, across distributed gateways seamlessly. And complementing this product is the Flex API Gateway. The Flex API Gateway is a very robust, highly available, secure product that we have built over the past couple of years. And now we have support for tons of APIs on Flex today. You have the ability to customize policies. We provide a bunch of policies that are out of the box. You have the capability to customize them with the policy development kit. Now, the key aspect of Flex is it's extremely flexible, meaning you can deploy it to any environment of your choice. You can deploy it to Linux, to containers, to Kubernetes. And it's and is managed both by a web-based UI or a CI/CD pipeline as well. So enough talk. Let's see it in action. So let's go through this pattern one more time. This time we are going to replace the gateway with the Flex API Gateway, and in this demo we are going to show later, you'll have the Flex API Gateway installed in a private space, managing many APIs. So let's go about and see some demos now.
Thanks. So Parvez has laid out a great vision for why you would want to use Flex Gateway and MuleSoft AnyPoint with Heroku, but I actually get the exciting point. I'm going to show you how to do it for real. We're going to do that in 4 parts. We're going to deploy an API to Heroku in a private space. We're going to deploy a MuleSoft Flex Gateway to that same private space. We're going to connect them together, and then we're going to secure that API using the tools in AnyPoint. So first off, we need an API. For the sake of the demo, we're going to do a really simple one. One route, post to hello. If you send it JSON with a name, it'll return a JSON response with a greeting. And we need to put this into a Heroku app, which you can just do through our web interface here. You need to give it a name. We're going to say we want it in a private space. We're going to mark it as internal only to that private space, and then we press create. And when you have a Heroku app, you can send your code to it just by git push Heroku main. Similar command to what you do to save your source to source control, but in this case, we're sending the source to Heroku, which detects it, picks the appropriate build pack, and then runs it in our infrastructure. So what you end up with is an app running in a private space, routed internal only to that private space, and it gets its own unique URL. Every Heroku app gets its own unique URL. So can we just stick this in a REST client and send a post to it? Not yet, because we marked it as internal only. We actually need that gateway as per the pattern. So that will be our next step. We're going to deploy a Flex Gateway. But first, in order to do that, we first have to use Design Center and create an API specification. They have graphical tools within AnyPoint to help you build this specification document with your routes and your inputs and outputs. And when you build it, you just click Publish, and your API shows up in Exchange in AnyPoint. When an API is in Exchange, it becomes available to the other tools that use AnyPoint, like Flex Gateways. So now we can use the API in a Flex Gateway. Let's build one. You choose Runtime Manager, Flex Gateways, add a gateway, and we're going to say we want a Docker container app. AnyPoint gives us some commands that I run on my computer, and when I run those, it writes a configuration file, which I'm going to need in a moment, but also it notifies AnyPoint, so when you go into Runtime Manager now, there's a listing for a Flex Gateway, but it shows disconnected because the control interface is there, but we don't have an app yet. To get an app running in GitHub under Heroku reference apps, we have a repository that helps you with the steps. You don't even have to download anything. You just press the button that says deploy to Heroku, and that will launch the Heroku dashboard where you can supply a name for your Flex Gateway app. You can put it in the same private space where the API went, and then we're not going to mark it in this case as internal only because it's going to be accessible from the internet. And now you go back to your computer, grab the config file that was written for you, copy the contents, paste it into a configuration variable called flex config, press deploy. Heroku takes over, finds the official Docker image from MuleSoft Flex Gateway, builds it, configures it, and runs it in our infrastructure, and you get an app in the same private space as the API, and it gets its own unique URL. And you see now back in AnyPoint, the control interface can see a connected gateway app, but it's not routing to an API yet. That's our next step. So what we do is you go back to that Flex Gateway and you say add API, and we select the gateway, you select the API that we put into Exchange, and now we need to map a route. So we're going to say /df24 for our example, and so when you hit the path df24 on the Flex Gateway, that gets mapped to the URL for the API that we deployed to Heroku in the first step. So now that that's mapping done, you just hit next, save and deploy, and this is really great. We made these changes in the web interface. They get written automatically to the running Flex Gateway in Heroku. So now, if you go into a REST client, you can send a post to the path for the Flex Gateway, that /df24, which is mapped to our API, and then /hello, which is the only route on that API, and we send the request. Now it works. That API had been hidden from the internet, but it's now connected via the Flex Gateway. So it's on that Flex Gateway now that we need to secure it. And the way we do that is you go back into AnyPoint to that API that's on the Flex Gateway, and you'll see that there's an option called Policies. You click on Policies and add policy, and there are lots of options for configuring access to APIs, but we're going to choose Client ID enforcement, and we're just going to accept the default parameters. And just like that, it updates the running gateway on Heroku again, and now if we send that request that had worked, you see it's now locked down. It says we need a client ID. That's easy enough to do also in AnyPoint. To get a client ID, you go to Exchange and choose the API, request access, fill out a form. It gives you a client ID and client secret that you can put into that request, and now it works again. So that's the entire pattern built, and I hope you recognize just now that we're managing the Heroku API with the Flex Gateway, just how easy it is just with some clicks to configure access to it. But even so, we're just scratching the surface of what's possible in terms of API management now that we're doing this. I'd like Parvez to say a little bit more about what we've unlocked.
Really, what has happened is because you introduced the Flex Gateway and brought your APIs into the AnyPoint platform, now all the lights light up, right? You can design and build APIs now, you can discover and govern those APIs now, and manage and secure them as well. And most importantly, you can reuse those APIs. We have the entire toolset open for you in the MuleSoft ecosystem to do that in one single unified platform with a single pane of glass vision into all the different APIs that you would have and built with, right? So one of our customers, Standard Bank, went from 0 to 70% of all their APIs cataloged and governed within just about 3 months. So definitely give it a try with your Heroku APIs as well. So we have one other final demo. I'll let Jonathan take and show you something.
I can't help myself. I wanted to show you one more thing that you can do now that the Heroku API is being managed with Flex Gateway. I'm going to show you how easy it is to add the Heroku API into a Salesforce org. Check this out. Okay, if you go into your Salesforce org, look up MuleSoft, and if your AnyPoint account is attached, you just press import, and look at that. The Heroku API just shows up to click on, and you just with click, it gets added to your Salesforce org. It gets added as an external service, which means that Salesforce will automatically generate Apex classes to access that API. And they'll work, of course, in Apex, but those auto-generated classes also show up as building blocks in Flow. So you can just take your ideas and configure them with blocks and clicks and pull in functionality that you've implemented in Heroku as an API. And this is all possible because you're managing that API with Heroku, with Flex Gateway. So I hope you're excited about this. I think this is really exciting. And if you're excited about it, you should scan this QR code because this is a link to a blog post that was co-written by Parvez and Heroku's developer relations and engineering. And in this blog post, it actually has step-by-step instructions to do precisely what I just showed you. So you can do this at home. No, seriously, you actually can do this at home because it turns out everything we're showing you is a currently shipping product. So you absolutely should go back to your companies, deploy APIs to Heroku, deploy Flex Gateway into Heroku, connect them together, manage the access with AnyPoint, connect to Salesforce, connect to other systems. Honestly, there's so much you could do, and I hope you explore that and build great things. So with that, we're very grateful that you came to hear us, and I hope you have a great Dreamforce and you'll learn a ton. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks. That was amazing, Jonathan.
For those of you who are here in person, we appreciate your feedback. So it's incentivized if you do 4-session surveys and you go to badge pickup, it's a chance to score a coffee. So consider that. If you want to learn more about Heroku at Dreamforce, we've got other talks and we've got demos. There's a QR code you can scan if you want to add that to your agenda.
Oh, thank you. Thanks everyone for coming. So, and about MuleSoft, right? Now you have a few sessions as well. There is a session about managing and securing APIs in the world of AI. That's on Thursday, 12 to 1 p.m. So definitely welcome to join us there.
And last but not least, Camp Mini Hacks in Moscone West in the Trailblazer Forest. Opportunity to get hands-on with Salesforce technologies, doing coding challenges. There are experts there from Heroku and MuleSoft. There's a dedicated MuleSoft mini hack, and there's also the mega hack, which is where you do a big coding challenge spanning multiple systems, and it just so happens the mega hack includes deploying a Heroku API, deploying Flex Gateway, connecting them together, and then using them in a Salesforce org. So if you actually, think about it like this. You have an opportunity to leave Dreamforce having built with your own hands what we actually just showed on stage. So that's a great opportunity as well if you're interested. We're done. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.